Last time in the Yu-Gi-Oh series, Yugi has solved the Millennium Puzzle, and now everyone wants it so they can rule the world.
Of course!
Now Yugi has to go through many adventures through children's card games and is born between his friends. Now Yugi has learned that his spirit is a pharaoh and must win at another children's card game to seek answers. Will he be able to find his answers? Stay tuned after a movie that really doesn't advance the plot in any way, shape, or form. Hey guys, Zecora the Diesel here, and welcome to the next Yu-Gi-Oh movie review, tying into the recent Yu-Gi-Oh movie that's about to come out pretty soon. So, after the first Yu-Gi-Oh series was released in Japan, the TV networks decided to try the series again, with a different format and a different team to make it. The result was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. And of course, this was the Yu-Gi-Oh! That most of us were familiar with, and this was the one that was released in America. Now, although technically this is supposed to be a sequel to the original, much like the manga, it was clear that this was supposed to be its own little thing. The show caught on very well for kids, much like how Pokemon caught on, and just like Pokemon, it was popular enough to get its own movie and have it released in theaters. This movie is left with mixed impressions amount from Yu-Gi-Oh fans. Some say it's good for the fans, but others say it's just a big waste of time with nothing really important happening. Are they both right? Well, yes, both have their reasons, and both have good reasons for their opinion on the movie. Okay, before I give my thoughts, let's talk about the story, and there will be some spoilers, but most of you have probably seen the film already. Okay, so the film takes place after Battle City, and Kaiba and Yugi are still dueling, and Kaiba is trying to figure out a way to beat Yugi's 3 Egyptian god cards. So he decides to go to Maximilian Pegasus to get a card that can do the trick. After dueling and beating Pegasus in a duel, he finds out that there were 2 cards that can beat the god cards. However, Pegasus says that he only had 1, but of course, Kaiba being Kaiba, he doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, we find out that the museum has found another ancient artifact in Egypt, and oddly enough, it almost looks like Yugi's Millennium Puzzle. So Yugi and his grandpa go and investigate, and it turns out that the pyramid is called the Pyramid of Light, and it holds the soul of Anubis, who the pharaoh had defeated before and is now back for revenge. So while Yugi leaves the museum, Kaiba's brother, Mokuba, tells Yugi that Kaiba wants to duel him, so he makes his way to the Kaiba Dome, and there the spirit from Yugi's Millennium Puzzle takes over and duels Kaiba. There we found out that the Pyramid of Light is not just an artifact, but a card as well. And this is basically almost like a shadow game, where every time Yugi or Kaiba loses life points, they'll be drained from energy. Also, thanks to the Pyramid of Light, Yugi, Joey, Tristan, and later Taya are into the Pharaoh's memory, where they find the room with a bunch of mummies and where Anubis is, and it turns out that Yugi needs to break the eye on top. He does so by throwing the dagger into the eye and breaks it. Thus, Yugi and his friends head back to the real world. Meanwhile, back to the duel, Kaiba is about to win, but he wants to destroy the Pyramid of Light. However, Anubis doesn't want him to, so he takes over the duel for him. But in the end, Yugi and the Pharaoh save the day, and everything is back to normal. Okay, so let's get my main issue with this movie, and that's the villain. Wow, is this the most laziest way to write a Yu-Gi-Oh villain? He's not very menacing, he's not even funny. We don't even know that much about him or his deal with the Pharaoh. He's not even that much of the main focus. He only gets a few amount of screen time, and by the time he does reveal himself, it's only like, 10 minutes? I just find him really forgettable. And considering the other villains we had on the show, this is a big disappointment. Heck, he's so forgettable that you can barely see him in the English poster. Yeah, if you look hard enough, you can actually see him very far behind Yugi. Also, the story is really confusing. Like I said, we know very little about the Pyramid of Light. All we know is that it's a card and an item. That's it. Go figure out the piece of the puzzle yourself. No pun intended. We don't know anything about how this duel works, or how it was back then, or heck, if this connects to anything. It's just there to be a plot, and much like the other plot, it's really forgettable, and it's never going to be seen or heard from again. But my biggest issue with the movie is that the whole thing is never mentioned again. We don't see the new cards that Kaiba has, we don't even hear a mention of it, it's just there and gone. This was just made because they wanted people to buy cards, and that's it. What was really the point in this movie? is just there to serve as filler. Heck, this is the worst filler from Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. I'll give the show credit that when it did filler, it still tried to tie in with the story, and it gave us some more information on the characters, even some on the villains, that they at least tried to make it seem somewhat important. This is just full of lazy writing and storytelling. There's nothing really that memorable or at least ties into anything at all. And like I said, it's just there and forgotten. Okay, if there are some things I do like about the movie, is 3 things. First, the animation is good. Not great, but as a movie based on a show, it's pretty good. It's got some nice angles, though I can understand people having problem with too many close-ups. The second thing I like about the movie is that it at least explains the plot of the show for the newcomers in the beginning, which is kind of pointless because the movie has nothing to do with the origin story, but it is nice that they at least tell you. Finally, the last thing I do like is that they at least give the other characters something to do, instead of just them being there for the sake of being there. They at least did something. So, final thoughts? This was a big disappointment. I want to like this movie. Heck, even as a kid I wanted to like this movie, but even as a kid I could tell there was something wrong with it. I remember being very bored by this movie. Every time I see it, I forget about it, and I'll probably forget about it again once this review is over. The story is dull, confusing, and it adds nothing to the show. The duel is not even that fun or interesting, and like I said, what was the point in this movie? In my opinion, this is probably the weakest Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie. I can't even really call it a guilty pleasure, so I'll just leave it at that. But hey, cheer up, we still got one more movie to go. So till then, I'll see you for Yu-Gi-Oh! 3D, Bonds Beyond Time. This is Zecora the Diesel, saying thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.